Hi, this is Livani Valdivia, and this is my Parenthood and Children presentation. Topics to be discussed during this presentation will be mainly about what factors to be considered when deciding to be a parent, or if you do not want to be a parent, how have trends of parenthood changed, and the advantages of parenting in the 21st century and some challenges parenting in the 21st century. So I first want to start off by saying this quote that really resonates with me, especially now as a parent, and it says, "It takes a village to raise a child." And this is based off of African proverb. The reason I even put this is because you never realize how many people it actually takes to raise a child until you have one yourself. And I mean, everybody that helps you out, babysitters, family, friends, it takes a lot of people to help you raise a child. I first want to start by defining families. So, as mentioned in the text, a family can be defined as any sexually expressive parent, child, or other kin relationship in which people usually related by ancestry, marriage, or adoption. As mentioned, there are various types and forms of families. You can do any number of combinations. You can be a single parent. You can be, a grandparent, an aunt, any possible way. You can be a family, and there's no something cookie cutter definition of what a family is. If you're thinking about being a parent, there are a couple things you have to keep in mind, and in the text it mentions, ideally right now, the family is going to be with, the parents, but it's ideally to only have 2 children. It has changed significantly because in the past it was more common to have more children. Something else you can do is some people just don't want to become a parent, and that's okay as well. Now, before in younger generations, once they become a parent, they're usually going to be from low income economic systems. They're going to be less educated, and they're also going to have a higher rate of getting pregnant unintentionally. As well, sometimes people are pressured into have children. It could be either with heterosexual couples, same-sex couples. In the text it mentions both deal with pressure of having children and fulfilling the family idea of having parents and then 2 children. Also, something to consider is the cost of having children, as well as something positive is children usually will give you a sense of purpose. Children also can be economic assets, and some people, as mentioned before, just don't want to be a parent, and that's okay too. As mentioned, parenthood trends have changed, and the reason, as mentioned before, is that I did mention children can be seen as economic assets, especially back in the day. People who would be their main financial income would be from working in a farm, living on a farm. You would want to have various numbers of children just because you can put children out to work in the field. Education also wasn't valued greatly back then. So ultimately having a higher number of children was greatly beneficial because you can have someone, taking care of the cows, chickens, cutting grass, feeding these animals, whichever it may be. You would have a lot of workers. So that is why it is mentioned that back then it was beneficial to have many children. Now, realistically, that agricultural life, farm life is not so common nowadays. People, want to aspire to get educated, get a job, somewhere, work 40 hours a week. There's so many different options, but it's not that common to have farm life type of idea, just because now children are required to go and get an education until they're 18. So it's not beneficial to have children anymore since they're going to be in school and not really be able to help you in a farm. So ultimately, now people wait to have children until they're economically stable and they're able to provide for the child, because that is what the job of a parent is to provide for a child, guide them, and educate them, not really to have them as farm workers. But that's our mentality now. I'm not saying that back in the day that was wrong. It was just the mentality back then, but now it's a different mentality that has shifted. So now we are focusing on being a parent in the 21st century. Being a parent in the 21st century is significantly different. Now parents have a higher education. They learn more about child development. We have learned now that spanking and, little pats here and there are not really something that we use in parenting nowadays. Of course, it is to each their own, but just right now, the mentality, it's that, as well as fathers now are more emotionally involved than in the past times. Before, we didn't really see that. Parents, more specifically fathers, they would hide their emotions. They wouldn't be that type of parent. It would be more reliant on the woman. But now it's more socially accepting, more socially wanted for fathers to be emotionally involved with parenting. Another great thing with parenting now is that you are able to get in touch with family members, whether if your parents are separated, you can contact your parents a lot easier, texting, FaceTime, numerous ways. So it's really interesting to see how family dynamics changed and how easy it is to get in touch with family. Now, with every positive, there are definitely negatives. So, some of the challenges with parenthood in the 21st century are going to be, most importantly, affecting cost of living. Everything is super expensive now, and the wages slowly are increasing. So, that's a little bit of a struggle, as well as now we have social media to deal with. With social media, there are bullies, internet trolls. People feel like they are more free on the internet, so they will be extra mean, and that is something that is really scary as a parent, especially for kids, because they're more easily accessible to the social media. As mentioned, technology is definitely a big plus, but it's also a negative just because kids now have so much access to it. There is cell phones, computers, iPads, even in school. So that's a little bit scary, just because we don't know what the development will be in the long run with having so much technology around children for all of their development and how that can affect. So that's something to keep in mind. As well as everybody's expected to work, so employers are less lenient with people who have families. Employers expect for a person to concentrate on work, put work first before family needs. So that's another thing. And then as well, there are so many different values that are just making parenting a little bit more complicated, just because you have to explain certain things to children that you wouldn't do before. One big thing that stood out to me was just gender, the idea of gender, how some parents are deciding not to what's the right word, to put a specific gender to their children, and this would be a thigh-bees, or babies. They wouldn't be a female. They would not be a boy or a girl. Of course, it will be either male or female by, their sex, but their gender, they would grow up and decide what they feel, if they're a boy or a girl. So it's a new thing we have to understand and be respectful about. Another one is going to be how we as parents can overwhelm our children. We often are now putting a lot of influence to what they're going through, what they're viewing, specifically just quoting from the book. So we as parents are influencing their children, health, weight, eating habits, intellectual abilities, behaviors, and self-esteem can be quite overwhelming. This is a little bit more complicated just because we are putting so much knowledge on our children, and we're often influencing them in how to think, what to do. So that can be overwhelming, just imagining being a child trying to decide what you want for yourself and your parent also adding that. So these are a couple things that you have to keep in mind. I do have here my references that I use to get some of this information as well, as long as with the textbook. Some of these were found online and as well through the library. And I do want to thank you for watching. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great week.